Have I fallen back in love with Apple or what Apple used to be? The funny thing about digital minimalism is that you find that you have a lot of extra time on your hands, and sometimes you end up thinking about things you never really thought about before. Now, let me back this up a little bit. Recently, I've purchased some old tech, and these both happen to be iPods. Once I bought these devices, I was really happy with buying them. One of them doesn't really work because the battery doesn't hold a charge, but the other one I bought because I really couldn't figure it out. I had to really think about it. Why am I purchasing tech that's about 20 years old? Well, once I thought about it, I realized that these ad campaigns that were launched back in 2004 to 2008 are still living rent-free in my subconscious. That's crazy, I know. But as somebody who has kind of had Apple in my life my whole life, I had to think about when it first kind of imprinted on my brain and why I keep coming back, especially to this specific time period. Now, my first recollection of an Apple campaign was the Think Different campaign in the 90s. This campaign, still today, is one of the most iconic Apple campaigns.
Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
I remember as a kid seeing all of these icons flashing up and being encouraged to be different, to think against the status quo, even if people thought you were crazy. I thought this was a great message, especially as a kid. I didn't know that there was a brand behind it. I just liked seeing the famous people like Albert Einstein, Amelia Earhart, and Martin Luther King Jr. And in the 90s, we were all encouraged to be unique and be different and be yourself, and I think that ad campaign fit perfectly within its time period. I wish Apple still thought the same today, but following those ad campaigns, there was the Get a Mac campaign.
Hello, I'm a Mac and I'm a PC.
I know for me, Justin Long will always be the Mac guy, no matter what he's been in or will be in. He is always the Mac guy. And even though this commercial never kind of encouraged me to buy a Mac, I think the fact that it was funny, I could still watch it today and laugh, especially when comparing Mac to Windows Vista. And I think it was a very clever ad campaign as far as a branding perspective, because just how the Mac guy and the Windows guy were dressed, a lot of us identified with how the Mac guy was dressed. I'm still dressed that way. I'm wearing a hoodie and jeans all the time. And I think the way that Apple marketed themselves, kind of the anti-corporate, anti-status quo, creative, people who love music, that way of kind of targeting that audience really worked for me, by the way. And growing up, I always aspired to have an iMac or a MacBook, and I figured I would be in a creative career somehow, and I knew that I would get those devices when I got older. I mean, when I was a kid, I really wanted the iMac color, in a blueberry color or a tangerine. And these devices still to me are beautiful and timeless, although not functional at all. I still think it's a great design, and it was a great idea to kind of stand out from the crowd. How many devices did you have growing up that had interesting colors? I know for me, all of my computers at home were a variation of an off-white, grayish, awful looking monitor and tower, and I think Apple was the first to kind of say, we can make this look better and people might want to buy it because it looks better, and they were right. Their design was completely different and really appealed to a lot of people, especially me as a child. I really aspired to have the same computer as Elle Woods, for example, and yeah, their product placement in the specific generations and targeting those of us who were younger to aspire to have those devices was really smart marketing. And as we grew older and as I was a teenager, I was really into music, and this is when the iPod campaigns came out. I know a lot of you will remember these campaigns as a silhouette dancing with a bright color background and a catchy song. And of course, the most iconic was seeing the iPod in all white with the white headphones. And yeah, that ad literally lives rent-free in my subconscious. I go back to using my iPod, I find myself dancing, and I'm realizing, oh, I'm reenacting an ad I saw 20 years ago, and it's still coming out. That ad was super impactful. All of the music played in it. I still love that music today. And honestly, I'll always keep coming back to the iPod because of it. I just really identify with it. It really spoke to me, and it obviously has ingrained in my brain for all of these years to where I just can't get away from it. I think that's the moment I truly fell in love with Apple. And as I got older and the brand has evolved and the brand has changed, of course, I've kind of fallen out of love with it because it's not what it used to be. It's not cool. It's not aspirational. It's kind of just become like any other device. It's become like any other company. It doesn't have fun colors anymore. It doesn't make me excited to pick up the device and look at the design. It looks like any other design. And yeah, I'm sad about that. It's kind of falling out of love with something that impacted your childhood. And I know a lot of people have this with cars. A lot of people have this with clothes or bags or shoes that they grew up with. And a lot of us have those brands or things that we aspire to get when we were older. But now I aspire to have the things that were around when I was younger. And of course, tech has changed so much that those products really just aren't functional in modern times. And even recently, when I invest in older tech like iPods, it kind of takes me back to a time period where we had a lot of patience when it came to charging our devices. It takes forever to charge. Having the correct charger for the Apple products, which is super frustrating, and not having that nowadays with USB-C has obviously changed a lot for a lot of people. Thank you, European Union. And yeah, there's a lot of frustrations going back to older tech, but still it's worth it using and feeling the happiness that I once had using these products, especially my older iPods. It kind of takes me back to a point in time where it was fun and it was cool to use, and it's still a conversation piece now, and it's still a piece of design, a piece of art. And I think tech now is not so much about design, it's about what's inside, which is also very important, especially when you're using tech for your job or creating. It's really important, the internals, but I also miss the aspect of the external. As somebody who is visually impaired, I can't see well, but the things I can see that are colorful and contrasting, I really appreciate it, and especially those with tactile buttons and things that we can click. There was just so much feedback for older devices, and I think Apple was an expert in this, and I really miss that aspect to it. I don't really like touching glass slabs. I like QWERTY keyboards. Again, another brand that I'm nostalgically stuck in is BlackBerry for that reason. And yeah, I just came to the realization that I am still in love with a brand that no longer exists, and it's kind of heartbreaking to see that a company that established themselves on thinking different, now when you aren't using Apple, you are different and are ostracized usually for that, either from society or from people in your family not understanding why you don't have an Apple iPhone. And when you explain that I do like Apple, I did like Apple, and I still buy Apple, but Apple from 20 years ago, people think you're crazy. And that's okay. I'm going to keep thinking different. Whether or not people agree with that, that's not my problem. And yeah, and I think taking a step back and looking at why we buy things we do and really making conscious decisions and understanding those decisions at a basic psychological level is quite interesting. And I've fallen down a lot of rabbit holes recently thinking about brands, and especially in tech in general, and those impacts those early ad campaigns had on us as children. As a parent myself, I'm hyper aware of marketing towards children, and those things have lasting impacts on us. I mean, look at companies like McDonald's or Coca-Cola, and we're still using those products, or maybe not, as adults, and we have those memories ingrained in us. And sometimes it's crazy how subconsciously they're still impacting us today. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.